So yeah, it's Parashat Chukat here in Eretz Yisrael this week. We talked about the tongue twister, Nachash Nechoshet, Nashach, Nachash Nechoshet, those three words that keep repeating themselves in those few psukim over there, where Moshe is commanded to create a copper snake in order to heal the people who were bitten by the snakes that came to them. What exactly is going on in the story over there?
Yeah, we tried to understand why would we suddenly create an idol that's like so anti everything we believe in. Why are we suddenly creating an idol? And more than that, if there's a problem with the snakes, just get rid of them. It seems like they're not gone. They still hang around there. They keep biting. Oh no, but there's a cure. And then they bite us again, and then there's a cure. What's really going on in this story? There's so much more here.
Exactly. Like we always do, we talked about the Hebrew language the Torah uses because you have to understand the Hebrew in order to fully understand this. You can't understand this story without the Hebrew. Like all of the Torah, you have to understand why the Torah uses the different words it uses. Not only the tongue twister of a Nachash Nechoshet Nashach, but also other words that appear over there in the psukim. What exactly is the Nachash Nechoshet about? What is the story? What is this super important lesson here to teach us even today, to us nowadays? Hope you enjoy it. Take a look. So this week it's Parashat Chukat here in Eretz Yisrael. As we say every year, this is the Parsha where we jump in time to the 40th year of the desert. Am Yisrael are about to enter the land. As we see in this week's Parsha, both Miriam and Aharon pass away. Last year we discussed the difference between the two. An incredible video. You want to watch that because we dove deep into the Hebrew language over there like we usually do. And what I want to talk about this year also involves diving deep into the Hebrew language, because this week we find a very famous tongue twister in this week's Parasha, what we call Nachash Nechoshet, a neshicha, a bite from a snake, from a nachash, then led into creating the Nachash Nechoshet. Neshicha, Nachash, Nechoshet. Those three words, we find them in this week's parasha in that one small story. And what I want to talk about is what exactly is going on over there, because this is a very non-typical story for the Torah. For the most basic reason, first of all, when something hurts us, we turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to help. We are not allowed to create any object. We don't create any type of idols to pray to look at in order for us to be better. That's not something we do. So how come over here HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe to go and create the snake from copper, this Nachash Nechoshet, and put it up so Am Yisrael could look at it, and by looking at it, they will get healed. But more than that, like I said, when you look in the psukim and look at the Hebrew language and at the language the Torah is using, there's so many questions to ask. We'll just name a few. Number one, what are they complaining about? We are used to complaining about water. We're used to complain about not having water, or on the other hand, having too much of something. But what are they complaining over here? Batiktsar nefesh ha'am baderech. Their soul, their nefesh was shortened by the way. What does that even mean? What does this expression mean? That they had enough of the way. So what is going on in this story over here? What is the story of the copper, the snake copper, Nachash Nechoshet, really about? And what is the Torah teaching us in all these different Hebrew words that the Torah is using over here?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. And let's start from the beginning. First of all, as you said, what's going on? What happened now? Why are they suddenly complaining? And if we look at the language, you mentioned Vatiktsar nefesh ha'am baderech, and there's also the use of the word nafshenu katza balechem hakotel. They sound very much the same. And Rashi points out that they're actually connected, these two words. And what we see is they both have the kuf tzadik. We know that word. Ketz. Ketz means the end. Maybe that's the hint to what's actually happening here. You said it's the 40th year. They get to Israel. They're about to go in. They managed to hold up for so long without complaining. All these years. They're about to enter the land. And then what the pasuk says is, now they're told to make a big circle. They were supposed to go, but Edom wouldn't let them through. And they're not supposed to have a war with them. So they go and have a circle. It's like, we're already at the end. We want to already get to the end. We're all done. We finished this journey. We got to where we wanted to get to. And here we have more of a derech. This way, this path, this journey doesn't end. And that's when they break down. And therefore, somehow the story of the snakes has to connect to that. But I think what's fascinating about the snakes is not only that the cure is some sort of idol, it's the fact that there is a cure. What did they ask for? They come to Moshe and say, can you pray to God to get rid of these snakes, which they understand and recognize came upon them because of their sin. So what would you expect? Just like Moshe did in Mitzrayim. Paro came to him and said, get rid of this. He davens to him and they're gone. That's not what happened. Instead of them being gone, Hashem says, no. That's a solution for Paro. For Am Yisrael, I want something else. I'm going to leave the snake. What am I going to do? I'm going to put up another snake. When they get bitten by one snake, they'll be cured by the other snake. Let's just get rid of all of this and the whole story is done. No, we leave it there. How is that a solution for the snakes? And how is that the lesson that they need to learn for the problem that they started? And I think, as we actually mentioned a few years back, one of the things here that's happening with the snake is the fact that they come to Moshe and say, the problem is the snakes. The snakes are biting us. The snakes are killing us. And Moshe does a really strange solution, as you said, and makes some sort of idol of a snake. That's not the point. The point is that Moshe is supposed to take the snake and la'alot al nes, and to raise up the snake on a stick, on a pole, which is the same word as a miracle, meaning to use that same snake which is killing them and put it as the cure. And what do you do by that? You tell them this isn't the story. The snakes are not what's killing you. It's what's behind the snakes. It's your actions. It's your deeds. That's the story. Don't get caught up in the snake. Not only not on the side of the cure, also not on the side of the punishment. Remember that the snakes are just another method. They're just another expression of your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and its ups and downs. So if I take that same thing and use it also as the punishment, but also as the cure, it becomes clear that it's obviously not the thing itself, because the thing itself can't be both. It's obviously what's behind that. But I think there's more than that, because I think, as we said, the big question is, why don't you just get rid of all this story? They learned their lesson. They got the snakes. They were bitten. Now cure them. Okay, use a snake to cure them, but finish this. Get rid of it. And I think that's the key to understanding what's happening here. They feel they've gotten to the end. And this is the biggest fear. And Moshe repeats this over and over and over in Dvarim. They're going to get to Eretz Yisrael. Everything's going to be okay. And they're going to feel they can relax and enjoy the moment. And that's great. But very quickly, v'noshantem ba'aretz ushchachtem, you'll forget God. Everything's fine. You'll forget that this fine is a present that's being given to you every single second of you living there in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, I don't want to get rid of the snakes, because it wasn't just about the snakes as a punishment. I want the snakes to stay there. I want the snakes to stay there because I want you to have the snakes and to be cured from the snakes, and to have the snakes and to be cured from the snakes. And every time they're there, and the snakes is just an example, but the idea is, as long as that's there, there's a continuous relationship. There's a continuous recognition that I'm being saved. If the snakes aren't there, I don't feel like I'm being saved from the snakes. They don't exist. They never were there. And that's the problem. They were covered all these years with the ananei kavod. Suddenly they're removed, and they're suddenly dealing with the world. They're about to go into Eretz Yisrael. They're going to suddenly deal with the world. And they need to go in not feeling that all this good that they're going to get, and they're going to get, is just, that's how things are. They need to continue that feeling. And as we see this concept at the beginning of Sefer Shoftim, when they just come into the land and they're settling there, Hashem leaves all these enemies around there, which keep being that reminder, which keep being the reminder that what you have, you need to appreciate. It's a present from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there are battles and there are enemies that don't want you there. And we get this reminder every day until today with our challenges today that remind us that every minute that we have here and every blessing that we have here is a blessing. These snakes, this challenge, this machala, the disease is there because when there's a disease, then we can also have a refuah. If there is no disease, then there is no refuah. There's no cure. To feel the cure, we need to have that disease and then to cure it. And I think that's the real message that is being taught here in Nachash Nechoshet.
Very good, very good. Continuing what you're saying, especially after the past week here in Eretz Yisrael, and as we've discussed also in the past few weeks in the Parashot, especially Parashat Shlach with the Meraglim, when we talked about the challenges that we face here in Eretz Yisrael, as the Gemara says, Eretz Yisrael niknet biyisurim. Eretz Yisrael is bought and acquired through difficulties, through hard times, through hardships. Maybe this is the main message that this story of Nachash Nechoshet again is teaching Am Yisrael. First of all, like you were saying, that unlike all the other times that Am Yisrael came to complain, so again, there were two types of complaints. There were, we don't have water, we don't have food, which were legitimate complaints because they didn't have. And there was the opposite side, 180 degrees of it, when they had too much and they stopped complaining. They complained for no reason. Amitonenim, amitavim. They wanted more. This wasn't good. And then they also got punished. In both situations, they got what they needed. The lesson they had to learn was taught to them over there. However, over here, we find a different type of complaint. We find a complaint that is also a legitimate complaint, but the first time in the desert, we see that it's hard for them. They're having a hard time. Rashi points out, like we were saying, that it was hard for them in the way. The way was hard. Maybe because we are right after Aaron died. Right after Aaron died, the ananei kavod, the clouds disappeared. The clouds, that their job was to to help them walk in the desert, to make the road, to make their way flat, to take away all those snakes, to take away all the rocks from the way, to help them walk, to keep their shoes, to keep their dresses fit, like we learned in Sefer Dvarim. That's what the Ananei HaKavod did, and this is now gone, but then came back, but it was basically gone, what they had for all these years, and now they have to learn to face these challenges. They have to learn how to face challenges in life. They're slowly leaving this world of miracles from Shemaim, of unnatural things happening to them in the desert, and they're going to have to start to learn how to live in the real world, where you face difficulties, and facing these difficulties is done by, first of all, not ignoring the fact that the difficulty is there. The snakes are there, like you're saying, but the answer to that is to face them, those difficulties, use those to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and turn those difficulties into your power, taking the difficulties you went through and using those into turn yourself into a stronger and better person through remembering that everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Both the snakes on the ground, but also that snake on the stick, both of them come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if those challenges you are facing are brought upon you, that means you can face them and you can become stronger from them. This is what we talked about in Parashat Shlach over there, when the Meraglim came back and saying that the land is so difficult and filled with challenges, but this is exactly the point. That's why the land produces such beautiful fruit, such juicy fruit, because this is what makes us stronger, these challenges. And this is the lesson Moshe Rabbeinu is teaching Am Yisrael over here. And we can't ignore the fact that this Nachash, this snake, is very, very familiar to us. This is the first story we find in Sefer Bereshit with the Nachash, with the snake coming over to Adam and Chava and telling them to eat from the tree. And like we discussed over there in the video over there, a very deep video also, you have to watch it because you have to understand the Hebrew language the Torah uses over there, with the Nachash being arum, being more wicked, more sophisticated than all the other animals, and the actual sin that Adam and Chava sinned over there. We explained over there that the sin was that they suddenly understood that they have the ability to make a decision. They have the ability to think for themselves. And with that, once you understand that you have the ability to make a decision, life becomes harder because suddenly you have a challenge. You have to face that challenge and you have to decide, what should I do? Where do I have to go? Life suddenly isn't a simple road ahead, isn't a one-way path ahead, and suddenly you have to make a decision. That's what happened over there with the Nachash. That's what Adam and Chava suddenly understood, that life has difficulties in it. And it goes deep into that because also we see that's the punishment that they get over there. Both Adam and Chava, Bezeat apecha tuchal lechem, is going to have to work hard in order to provide, and Be'etzev tilti banim, she's going to have to go through pain in order to have a family, in order to have kids. This is what the story teaches us over there. Adam and Chava being in Gan Eden, being in this perfect world where everything was brought to them, and all they had to do was just walk straight down that path. The derech, the path, was very easy to walk on. And when they sinned, what happened to them was they created this world where there are two paths, where there are two ways to go, and now they have to make a decision which one, and they have a challenge they have to face. Being in Gan Eden, being in that perfect world, there was no journey to go through. There were no challenges. Everything was simple and straightforward. And suddenly, after the sin, now they have Bezeat apecha. Now they have to work hard, and they have challenges with giving birth. And suddenly, there's a journey to go through in order to get to that desired outcome. Maybe this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe to teach Am Yisrael over here with the Nachash Nechoshet, the copper that is used in order to melt and to model out of it different objects. It's the metal that is easy to model out of it different objects. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe over here. You have to understand and you have to teach Am Yisrael that they're about to go into the land where they're going to face challenges, and they're going to have to fight through those challenges, and it's going to be hard for them, and it's going to bite them, and it's going to be really difficult for them. But in order to fight those challenges, in order to fight those Yisurim, in order to fight that pain, they're going to have to look up to Shemaim and daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what's going to give them the strength to fight those battles and overcome them and be victorious over those snakes that are fighting them. But most importantly, remember, like we mentioned many, many times, a very fundamental Reb Nachman in Likutei Moharan, that if a person knows that the pain that they receive comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and remembers that what hurts them actually comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then it makes it a lot easier to endure the pain. It makes it a lot easier to face those challenges and to overcome them and become stronger from them. Like the story mentioned also several times, like when you walk in the street and suddenly you get hit on your back and you're very upset about that painful hit you just got, and you turn around and you see a friend you haven't seen in so long, and suddenly that pain, that frustration turns into love and into happiness. Why does that happen? Because you understand that the person who hit you was a close friend, was a good friend, and just wanted the good for you. So the same thing over here. Maybe this is the lesson that Moshe has to teach Am Yisrael over here. You're about to enter the land. There's no ma'aneh kavod. The journey, the derech, is a hard journey. There are difficulties in it. You are going to want to give up. You will want to give up, but you don't give up. You look up to Shemaim. You remind yourself that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one in control. You remind yourself that all this pain only comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu because He wants the best for us, and it makes us even stronger. And this is the lesson that Am Yisrael have to learn over here.
Yes, very true, exactly. And that's really their challenge. What they don't want is to be on the journey anymore. They just want it all over. And what they're being taught is if you get rid of the journey, you go back to the snakes back then. Because if the solution for the snake was the journey, if you throw out the journey, you're back to the snake back in Gan Eden. And based on what you're saying, it's not even two snakes. It's not that there's the one snake, that there's the evil snake, and then there's the one on top. It's the point is, you see that snake that's hurting you? It is the cure. Not that we're going to bring another snake that's going to be the cure. The snake, the pain, is the cure itself. And all this also explains the saying of Chazal. And they ask about this copper snake, Nachash memit, or Nachash mechayeh, what the snake kills or the snake saves. And that's exactly the point. We look carefully in their words. They don't say, does the copper snake cure and does the other snake kill? Their point is, it's not the snake, not this snake, not that snake. The snake, the pain, and the cure, it's all part of the same story. It's all part of the lesson. It's all part of our growth.
Very good, very good. Exactly. And you know what the difference between someone who knows that life is about the journey, in order to get to a certain outcome, you have to work out through the journey, just like in math. You have to go through the entire algorithm, the entire function in order to get to the end result. You know, I teach my kids all the time in math. It's about the process. It's about the way. Same thing goes in life. You know what's the difference between a person who understands that and a person who just wants to get to the end? You know what they do? They just guess. They guess that end result because they don't care about the process. They don't care about the way. And you know what we call that in Hebrew? Nachash. Somebody who guesses. Somebody who tries to use trickery. Somebody who tries to use magic in order to get to that end. Somebody who in the Torah who is a sorcerer is a menachesh. And that we will see next week in Parashat Balak when we get to Bilam Arasha. That's already for next week. We'll have to end here because this video is already long. We'll just remind the viewers what we discussed the past couple of years, because last year we had a bomb video about the actual sin that Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron sinned in Mei Merivah. You really have to understand the Hebrew language in the Torah in order to fully understand what goes on there, because it's an incredible question to be asked. Why did Am Yisrael mourn so much Aaron after the sin and they didn't mourn at all Miriam before the sin? How does that influence Aaron and Moshe's sin in Mei Merivah? How does it connect to Miriam herself through her name Miriam? And how does it connect to the other places we found Miriam in? There's so much going on over there. You really have to take a look in order to understand the psukim over there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, share it around with your friends. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, please consider subscribing. Help us grow the channel. Of course, if you have any comments, feel free to drop them below on YouTube or send them in on Twitter. And shkoyach yitzi.
Shkoyach tuvia, Shabbat shalom, and besorot tovot.
Shabbat shalom, besorot tovot.